Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk a little bit more about OCD, but I'm going to touch upon the things that I haven't talked about in my previous videos, and specifically that's my obsession with numbers and counting. It only just dawned on me how different my life is now, now that I don't really care if I do things in threes or in fives. I loved the numbers 1, 3, 5. Those were like acceptable. Those were kind of like the best numbers that I could think of, and then 6 was alright because that's like 1 plus 5, and then 9 is good, 12, 15, like the 10s were okay, 10, 20, 30, 40, like those were fine. 7 was unacceptable, 8 was unadvisable, etc. So I had really distinct ideas about, what numbers meant to me, and I was only allowed to do things in a certain number. Because I also had anorexia at the same time as my OCD, I simply had to do as many exercises as possible. And when I looked back on my, exercise routine, I had to identify whether I'd done each exercise. And I couldn't just say, oh yeah, I remember doing that, tick. I had to have 3 distinct memories because remember 3 is better than 1. And because I did them every single day the same ones, it was really hard for me to discern whether it was today that I remembered doing it or whether it was yesterday or last week. And so if I couldn't come up with 3 distinct memories, I had to do it again. And that's where the spiral kind of went out of control, because instead of just saying, okay, number 3 is a good number and I can do exercise in threes, I began to really ingrain this number 3 into every single thing that I did, which became overwhelming after a while. And so that was one part of it. The other part was counting. I counted everything that I did, like be it grains of rice, be it like, just anything. Like I would just count things, like the stuff in my bag had to be a certain number. And soon enough, like after about half a year, this sort of counting just really began to dominate my life, to the point where I would wake up in cold sweat sometimes, screaming, only to realize that I didn't have, like, I would start screaming because in my dream I hadn't reached the perfect number, And that also extended to just unconscious counting. I would unconsciously count things that I didn't even think I had to count. Like, for example, my steps. I'd be walking to class, and because it was a repetitive movement, my instinct would be to count. And so I'd be counting. And I remember one instance when we went on holiday with my gran, me and my sister. We went on holiday and we were swimming in the sea, and gran kept going like, what, to me. And I was like, nothing. Like, I was like, what? And it was only when I got out the water, she was like, what were you saying to me? I couldn't hear you. And I was like, I wasn't saying anything to you. And she was like, no, you were talking to me. And that's when I realized that I was counting strokes, and I was doing it out loud because it was so unconscious. I had to make sure that I counted each stroke properly, so I did it out loud. But I didn't actually need to count the strokes. It's just that counting became such an unconscious response to every single repetitive movement that I ever did. So yeah, that was kind of the obsession with numbers and counting, which really, I think looking back, that was really, really hard to deal with, because when you count everything, again, it's hard to remember what you're counting, and it's hard to remember which number you reached because you already reached that number so many times that day. And that kind of builds into the whole control and intrusive thoughts, which question whether you've done something properly, question the quality you've done it, all those things, which are so typical. But coming back to the topic that mental illness isn't entirely negative, I just want to say that, although obviously I have recovered, the fact that I grouped things into threes instinctively has really helped me with things like revision in my post-recovery life, with things like exercising, not obsessively, not like, okay, if I don't do, 6 repetitions, that's not good enough, because 4 is a bad number. Not like that. If I know that I have to do 4 repetitions, I'm not going to freak out because it's a 4. But if I have complete freedom to decide what I'm going to do, for example, I have to do 150 squats. It would be ludicrous to do them in one go, unless that's how you train and you're an elite athlete, whatever. But for me personally, I can't do 150 squats in one go, so I have to break them down into 3 sets of 50, and that's just something that comes naturally. For example, the same with revision. If I know that I have to go through something twice, I'm not going to freak out because 2 is a bad number. But if I have complete freedom in how many times I go through something, I'm going to choose 3, because that's like, it's just natural. And so people often ask like, oh, how do you make a revision timetable in 5 minutes? And I'm like, well, that's because I inevitably group the topics into the right numbers and into the right days. Like it's just so natural for me to group and to organize, that it just makes my life so much easier day to day. Like even living at uni, grocery shopping, laundry, cleaning, all those things, they are so much easier for me because I have like an ingrained system. So I don't have to like make a list when I go to the grocery store. I don't even have to keep that list in my mind. It's just so natural because I know that, okay, I need to buy breakfast food, and I break that down into groups of 3. And so then I look at my shopping cart and I'm like, okay, well, I've only done 2 groups. I don't even have to think, you know, it's interesting. And that's just one example of how, you know, post-recovery behaviors that you kind of retain can be really helpful. And it doesn't have to be necessarily like a dark period of your past. You know, mental illness does not have to be that. It can be a challenge that you've overcome and which has taught you how you want to live your life. Because before I developed OCD, I was like, okay, I wasn't a bad student. I got straight A's, I was fine. But in terms of my personal like life, I was so lost and I was the opposite of obsessive. I was just like, whatever. I was like, okay, I can watch movies till 2 a.m. and then stay up till 6 a.m. doing my homework and then go to school with 1 hour of sleep. Like that was me before OCD. Like for example, I figure skated and I didn't mind missing training. Like I had no, like the discipline and the organization that comes with OCD. I was the opposite of that, and I don't want to go back to that. I enjoy knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow. I enjoy planning stuff. Like that's enjoyable to me because it means that I have a certain degree of control over, you know, my life. And I think that that's so powerful. Like I don't want to take that away from myself, but then I also would never want that to go to unhealthy levels ever again. So yeah, if you guys have any ideas or thoughts about how having gone through mental illness can be a positive thing, please like just, you know, share, because I think that would be so useful for everyone to read. And yeah, I love you guys so much. I hope you're having a fabulous day, and please remember, mental illness is a journey, not a destination. And yeah, I love you so much.